This is probably not what you think of when you think of the Industrial Revolution. You think of steam trains and steam engines and canals and mills. What you don't think of is amusement parks and pleasure beaches and, yes, even merry-go-rounds like this. I'm Darren, and this is the Industrial Revolution. The earliest known predecessor to the merry-go-round came from the 5th century Byzantine Empire. Baskets were hooked by ropes to a tall pole and spun around, basically creating a ride for kids. By the 12th century, though, it had grown into a military training tool throughout Europe and Asia. There's a few versions of the story here, and actual artifacts are pretty hard to come by, but here's what we know. Knights, and knights in training, would ride actual horses in a tight circle, possibly tossing things back and forth in the circle in a game called Carousel. This is where the name Carousel came from. In another version, riding real horses in a tight circle, using a long stick, riders would try to knock the hat off people standing next to the ring. Eventually, of course, the real horses were replaced with fake horses, probably just a saddle on a board initially, to play the games and to train knights. By the 1800s, with the Industrial Revolution now in high gear, changes were happening. Before the Industrial Revolution, of course, there were plenty of traveling carnivals, typically a wagon or two with acts like minstrels, magicians, and acrobats. The Industrial Revolution completely changed that. It drew ever-increasing numbers of people into densely populated cities. At the same time, passenger railroads created easy and affordable travel. The combination of dense population and easy travel directly led to the idea of the vacation or holiday, and to pleasure beaches and amusement parks. I'll do another video on the birth of amusement parks later. It's actually a really interesting topic, so stay tuned for that. But back to merry-go-rounds, which were one of the first rides to appear at those amusement parks. This is the oldest surviving carousel in the world. It's the Hanau Carousel in Hanau, Hesse, Germany. It was built in 1870 and was recently restored and returned to function. You'll notice that it looks a bit different from what you're probably used to seeing. The first thing, none of the horses are actually moving, except around in a circle, of course. Also, the entire platform isn't moving, but only a single narrow band. From underneath, you can see exactly how this mechanism works. It was originally powered by humans, walking in circles, pushing poles in the underground part of the carousel. Humans were eventually replaced with a horse and a blind mule, and currently an electric motor. The loud bell you often hear just before a merry-go-round starts actually dates back to this era. The bell would tell the people, or the horses, to start walking. In 1861, Thomas Bradshaw introduced the first steam-powered carousel, which he called a roundabout, at the Pot Market Fair in Bolton, England. This steam-powered galloper in Warwick, England, was built in 1885 by Robert Tidman and Sons. You'll note that I called it a galloper. While the terms are often regional, gallopers typically rotate clockwise, carousels typically rotate counterclockwise, and merry-go-rounds are often a more generic term for both, although some people do consider the term merry-go-round to only apply to the small merry-go-rounds found in children's playgrounds. Well, like everything else they touch, steam engines brought a lot more power to merry-go-rounds, and that extra power completely revolutionized them. First, they obviously grew bigger, with multiple rows of horses on a much bigger rotating platform. Let's return to the Merry-Go-Round Museum in Sandusky to see some of these further innovations. In the 1870s, Frederick Savage invented the overhead crank mechanism to add motion to the horses. With multiple horses in each row connected to a single crank rod, the horses were staggered in different up-down positions. This balances out the weight, reducing the power required to rotate the crank rod. Since we're talking about power, before we go on to look at some of the more artistic carousel features and their amazing collection of horses here in the museum, Let's take a look at how this 1839 Allen Herschel carousel actually works. First of all, this is a portable carousel for fair and carnival use. It can be quickly disassembled, loaded onto a single truck, transported, and then quickly reassembled, ready for use at the next location. The entire carousel is supported by this massive timber cross. In the center of the cross is the large vertical center pole, supported by diagonal supports running to the cross on the ground. Everything on the carousel is actually supported by this center pole. High up on the center pole is the main bearing. Ultimately, everything ends up hanging off of this bearing. The horizontal poles sticking out from the center are called sweeps, and they're supported by sweep stays, which are rods running up to the center bearing all the way at the top. Solid drop rods connect from the sweeps overhead down to the platform, which is fully supported by the sweeps. The platform in carousels like this floats above the ground without ever touching it. That's critical in cases where you're setting up in various places where the ground may or may not be flat, as is the case with traveling rides. And finally, of course, is the band organ. The combination of a calliope and a player piano, the band organ was the Industrial Revolution's peak musical invention. So I love band organs, and I'll be making another video on them in the future, as well as why I called it a calliope and not a calliope. But for now, let's focus on actually making this carousel move. It all starts with this 5 horsepower electric motor. The motor turns this vertical shaft, which goes up to the large ring gear, which is attached to the sweeps. That rotates the entire carousel around the center pole. Now, I was pretty sure this was overkill when I saw it, and talking with one of the team at the museum, she confirmed that it is. With the brake released, you can actually rotate the carousel by hand. But what about moving the horses? Well, if we look up the center pole, you see there's a smaller stationary gear mounted around the pole, and all the crank rods come over to this stationary gear. The carousel rotates around it, which makes the cranks rotate, and that makes the horses go up and down. So put it all together, and we get this beautiful high-speed carousel.
All right, my riders, are you ready?
High speed? Yep. Normal carousels travel about 3 miles per hour, 5 kilometers per hour at the outside edge. This one is more of a thrill ride though, running about 9 miles per hour, 15 kilometers per hour. They actually do go even faster though, with some going as fast as 20 miles or 32 kilometers per hour. One more historical element of carousels is the brass ring dispenser. If you've ever heard the phrase, "go for the brass ring," this is where it came from. Going back to medieval night, they would sometimes set up rings on the jousting course, then charge at full speed, trying to pick up the rings with their lance to practice their aim. These brass ring dispensers evolved directly from that and used to be common on carousels. People riding on the outer ring of horses could reach out to the side and try to grab a ring as they went by. The outer ring of horses on many carousels didn't move up and down, so especially on those carousels, these rings were an incentive to get people to ride on the outer, less exciting horses. You see it's hinged to swing easily. If your hand inadvertently hit it hard, it'd just swing out of the way. Hopefully this meant you wouldn't hurt either your hand or the dispenser. The seat up there is to keep the dispenser loaded with a mix of brass and steel rings. So what did you win if you got the brass ring? Typically you won a free ride. Of course, since you were probably there with friends, if one person won a free ride, the rest would probably buy another ticket. So there was certainly some incentive to load up a good number of brass rings. Then of course there's the incredible art of carousels. While modern carousels are a bit more mass-produced, historically the horses were hand-carved by artisans, and everything from the artwork on the carousel itself to the horses and chariots was hand-painted in bright colors to catch the eye. The horses, especially, were each a unique work of art, and today they're collector's pieces, routinely bringing in over $10,000 a piece when they go on sale. Since this is a portable carousel, the horses had to actually be fairly easy to remove. You can see at the top of the pole, there's a surprisingly shallow-looking hook to connect it to the crank. At the bottom, the pole going through the horse goes into a hollow pipe. That pipe is connected to the floor with a ball joint to allow it to move back and forth. To remove the horse, either lift it up all the way out of the pipe, or, if you don't want to lift it that far, just remove a couple screws on the bottom to separate the pipe from the ball joint. Then just lift the horse up an inch or two and it comes right off. Of course, the art of carousels didn't stop with the Industrial Revolution. This is the largest carousel in the world, built in 1981 at House on the Rock in Wisconsin. At 80 feet in diameter and weighing 36 tons, it has 269 animals, but not a single horse. It has 182 chandeliers and more than 20,000 lights. So merry-go-rounds like this, whether you call them merry-go-rounds or gallopers or carousels, they got their start as military training tools, but they didn't stay military training tools. As you can see today, here at the Merry-Go-Round Museum in Sandusky, Ohio, the technology hasn't really changed very much since the late 1700s when these actually had horses put on them and kids started riding them. They still ride them today. That's why places like this and merry-go-rounds like this is the Industrial Revolution. Hey, wait just a second before you go. I need your help to keep the channel growing here. First thing you can do is really easy. Just like, subscribe, share this video. Tell all your friends about it. That spreads the word. YouTube will see that and we'll show this to more people. Commenting more than just 2 or 3 words. YouTube says that's the most important thing you can get. It's the best kind of user interaction there is. So you can comment more than just 2 or 3 words. Also, if you're able to and are interested in helping out financially, these are pretty expensive videos to film, a lot of travel costs on top of the hours of work I do here. You can help out at patreon.com/industrialrevolution or become a member here on YouTube or a single contribution through Super Thanks. Also have an affiliate store. If you click that, anything you buy there, a percentage of that purchase will come to help fund the channel. Thanks for your help and look forward to seeing you next week.